Hello everyone, I'm Björn, and today I'm talking with Ariadne, who we also call Audie, about creating space, the final frontier. Having space in your life is really important for learning how to be yourself, which maybe is something a lot of systems kind of have to learn how to do because we spend so much of our life masking the fact that we're actually a lot of people. And so when you stop pretending to just be one person and you get to allow yourself to be whoever you are at any given moment, you suddenly have to figure out how to even do that. And you're probably out of practice with how to give yourself space or how to give each other space. And so we're just going to talk about that a little bit today. But before we get into that, we also want to say that if you're going to embark on this journey, you should know it is not without risks. When you open the door to something, you're kind of opening the door to an unknown. If you make space in your life, you will never know for sure what is going to fill that space. So when you open the door to this part of your life that you haven't really spent much time looking at and you've been ignoring it for so long, it's hard to say what's going to be there. It's an unknown. There may be things that you've been repressing for a really long time. There could be some hard memories. There could be some hard realities. It's not a journey without risks. Every journey has risks. So we don't want to just say, yeah, give yourself space and everything's going to be super great and awesome forever. That's not the message. The message is we have found giving each other space and giving ourselves space has dramatically improved our life, but it has also come with its own challenges. We have found hard things and we have had to deal with hard things that we hadn't looked at for years and years and years. And it has been a journey with its ups and its downs. And overall, we would say it's worth it. But you might not be at a point in your life when you're ready to open that door on an unknown. And that's okay. Our litmus test for whether or not you should go forward with it is kind of, does the door open easily or not? Because if it's not opening, don't be a locksmith. If the door is not opening, don't push it. Because the fact the door's not opening is probably a message to you that you're not quite ready for it. And maybe you specifically within your system feel ready for it, but maybe the system as a whole doesn't feel ready for it. Maybe the group dynamics as a whole are just not strong enough. Maybe the actual life circumstances that you're in are not conducive to what you may find there, and you don't on a deeper level feel that you have enough of a support system to handle it. The deep system is sending you a message by not giving you access to memories or parts of your life that you might want access to right away. So in the beginning, I was really pushing to remember things and I just couldn't. And if no one was there to hand me memories that they had from pre-13, on my own, I didn't have any. I had none of my own personal memories from before 13. And that was kind of terrifying. But I had to realize over time not to push and to wait for everyone else to be ready, and also to not be so possessive over the memories of the life, because those are not my memories. I have my own memories, but I don't have any memories before 13, not really. So I have to respect everyone else in the system, and I have to respect that they might not be ready yet to share things with me. And it's their memory ultimately. So if they choose to share it or they choose not to share it, that is their choice. And giving each other choices is one of the very first ways that we kind of learned to give each other space. Because so many of the problems that we have in our life, so much of the trauma that we have in our life, and probably in most people's lives, denial of choice and autonomy are a huge factor in a lot of people's traumas and a huge factor in our traumas. And so if I just give into my own impulses to want to know things, and if I pressured them more to just give me their memories and tell me what happened, I would just be doing to them what had already been done to them. I would just be continuing the pattern of denying them choice and autonomy. And once I realized that, I stopped pushing, and I adopted a completely different way of approaching everything. you like realized that pretty early on because you're a pretty smart cookie, so you weren't being too demanding for very long at all. And that's probably a lot because our therapist was really good about like slowing you down. I feel like 90% of his job at the beginning was just being like, Ariadne, slow your roll. And you were like, okay. Yeah. I mean, he's a great therapist, so I think that is not an inaccurate description of the early days. But anyway, so that's one of the first ways you can create space, is by acknowledging everybody's personhood, really. And as soon as I did acknowledge their personhood, I was very quickly like, oh my God, they're real people. They may even be realer than I am. And at this point, I'm like, I think that we're all equally real. But for a short moment in time, I was like, oh my God, I am like a shadow of a person. I am no one and nothing. And that was really hard. That was, oof. Yeah, you got the depersonalization and derealization so hard. Like so hard. Harder than anybody else in the system has ever gotten it. And then you had it for like months. Yeah, that was so rough. But then you learned to feel your own emotions and like identify them. And then you got better. Yeah, that's probably what did it. I mean, I thought it was Phyllis giving me a magical key and telling me that it would like ground me to reality because it was made out of iron. I mean, that did help, which is weird because you don't even believe in magic. Maybe it was just the thought that counted. Phyllis is such a sweetheart. Anyway, yeah, I have alexithymia pretty bad. And so learning to identify my own emotions was like a thing I had to work on for a really long time. And now I can name like 5 of them and I'm super proud of it. I actually am. I'm really proud of it. And it wasn't easy. Like everybody has their own issues to work on. Everyone has their own things to learn, and giving each other space and time to do that is really important. And weirdly, what it ended up leading to was giving myself space and time to work on things like my alexithymia and feeling like I needed to be in control of everything all of the time and figuring out how to let go of that because we can't be in control of everything all the time. Including our trauma. Like, I think that the narrative of the world that we're sort of fed growing up that makes trauma worse sometimes is this idea that if you do everything right, then bad stuff isn't going to happen to you. So then when bad stuff does happen to you, it's like you internalize that feeling of like bad stuff happened to me, so it must be my fault. And that's really unhelpful. That's like so unhelpful. And it's not at all true. Like bad stuff happens. We don't have control over the bad stuff that happens to us. No, we don't. Bad stuff happened to me, but like it's not my fault that it happened to me. And I can't control if bad stuff happens to me or not. All I can do is like decide what I do with that after the fact. Like, because the bad stuff that happened to me, that's not who I am either. Bad stuff just happens sometimes. And it's hard to deal with, and it's hard to get over, and it can make you feel really scared for a really long time. But it's not who you are. And it's not your fault. It's never your fault. Well said. All right, so the first part is don't be a locksmith. That's one of the ways to sort of create space is by giving people the choice whether or not they open up about things or they don't. So that's kind of where we start. So yeah, you should give each other space, but part of that is actually letting doors stay closed if that's what people need at the time or what the system needs at that time. So yeah, don't be a locksmith. Then once you do start making space for each other, you don't necessarily, and you're not opening the doors that are closed. What do you do instead of prying? How do you not pry? What do you talk about instead? And the things you talk about are anything else. It's not that hard. You just ask them about what they're into, what colors do they like, their favorite type of music, what do they like to do for hobbies? Have they ever thought about doing X, Y, or Z? Like, do they ever draw? Maybe just sit down and draw together. So I'm going to call this whole topic, this whole umbrella topic, it's okay to talk about shoes. And I'm going to say I'm calling it that because shoes and talking about shoes seems like a really frivolous, silly thing to do. But the reality is we could all just use some talk about shoes sometimes. We could all just talk about frivolous nonsense. And so many friendships are really built on that foundation of just building up a rapport, and you need to do that with your system mates too. Like, there is not a quick little shortcut for just diving into any relationship. You just have to start somewhere and talking about low pressure things and frivolous things like shoes or your favorite TV show or whether or not they like the Beastie Boys. I don't know. Anything is a good place to start. And the reality is, if you just get people talking, you're going to end up learning a lot about them that's tangential and unrelated to all the frivolous things, because we are all so inside of our own stories all of the time. And so what we end up talking about and what we end up gravitating towards still matters, even if the subject matter doesn't really seem to matter. Just building up that relationship does. So it's okay to talk about shoes. Thank you, Ariadne. So the next topic after that is sandwiches. A sandwich can just be a sandwich, or a sandwich can be a moment to be mindful in the middle of your day about your own needs, and you can use it to sort of create a small space in your life. And it's not like it takes very long, like eating lunch or making yourself a sandwich and eating lunch doesn't take very long. It doesn't take much out of your day, and you're going to be doing it anyway. But like doing it mindfully versus just doing it in a rush and not thinking about it at all is such a big difference. When you do it mindfully, it can be a moment to really give a gift of time and space to yourself. And you're not thinking about other things or worrying about other people. You're just taking a moment to connect with yourself, you specifically, because everyone in the system matters, including you, and you need to take time to remember that. And so it's nice to build it into like everyday kind of simple things, like making a sandwich or having a cup of tea or drinking water. It's like a reminder that like the body has physical needs and I have emotional needs too. And when I meet the body's physical needs in a mindful way, it can be a good way to start practicing thinking about my needs emotionally, and what do I need and how am I feeling, and is there any way for me to get my emotional needs met while I'm meeting this physical need for the body. So that's kind of how we practice it, and it's just, you can apply it to a lot of things in your life. Thank you so much, Bjorn. Okay, so the last part we want to talk about is talking without words. This is something that's really important to us because at this point, everyone in our system does talk with words, but that has not always been the case. Yeah, when I first showed up, I didn't talk for a really, really long time, but that doesn't mean that the system didn't still communicate with me. And actually, Audie, you're really good at talking to people when they don't use words. Like even with August, you're really good with talking to him just by sort of listening to how he was feeling. There's a lot of different ways to listen to people, and that's for outside people and system people. Like you don't necessarily have to talk to someone or say words to know how they're feeling. They can show you how they're feeling through their actions and their body language and their tone of voice. There's so many different ways to communicate that don't necessarily require you to use words. And if someone in your system doesn't feel comfortable using words yet, or maybe they're never going to be comfortable using words ever, it's important to respect that and not pressure them to use words when they're not ready to, or when they might never ever be ready to or able to. But making space for them to be different and allowing for them to be how they are is a huge thing, and it can mean so much to them. It meant a lot to me. Let's talk about specifically what you can do to talk with people without using words. One thing that we have done in the past to talk with people without words was to paint rocks. And it's a fun little activity that you can do with system kids. And it started because in this movie that we quite like, that we watched a long time ago, there was this scene between a father and a son, and the father is telling the son the story that in the ancient times, like before people had words and like letters, they would just send each other rocks. So they would walk along the riverbank and they would pick up a rock that symbolized their feeling for that moment. And so they would send that rock to someone, and then the person would receive the rock and they would understand how that person felt about them. And the father and son like pick out rocks and give them to each other. And it's just kind of like really sweet and a little silly, but like it's wonderful. And that's something that we started doing with our husband Fish a long time ago. And then when we realized we were a system, we were having some trouble communicating with each other, it was something we started doing too, is picking up word rocks. And then you can take it a step further and you can pick out a bunch of word rocks and then you can paint them. And you can paint them with symbols or colors, whatever you want. There's like no limitations. It's just a fun activity you can do together to spend time with one another and connect with one another. And that's really what it's about. Creating space for each other is just about connecting with each other. And it's about connecting with yourself. So I, Ariadne, need to take time and devote energy to connecting with my specific self as Ariadne. And Björn has to take time to connect with himself and being Björn and who he is. But then we also have to take time to connect with each other and have conversations like we're having now, so that each individual system member is stronger and the relationships between system members is also stronger. So as a whole group, the system is stronger too. Another thing that you can do is create physical spaces. It's like a really fun way to like create a safe space, and you can do it together with your system members, and you can decide what you bring into it. And what I'm talking about is making forts. So we really like forts and making them, and you can make them a lot of different ways. One of our favorite ways to make a fort is in the summertime when it's really hot. You get a fan and a duvet cover, and you just set up a fan on the floor that blows the wind into the duvet, and it just blows it up like a big balloon tent, and then you can sit in it and it's nice because of the airflow. So yeah, fort making is another good way to talk with each other and create space for each other, like actual physical space for each other. And you can make your system kids feel valued and welcomed and safe, because forts are safe, obviously. Forts are very safe places. Right. Very safe. And also just drawing, painting, any sort of creative outlet, playing music. All of these are wonderful ways to speak with each other and talk with each other and create a connection with each other without using words. And that really leads us to art, and doing art as a way to create space for yourself and for your system mates and to communicate with yourself and with each other. Art is really important, not only because it gives you a space to express things that are maybe difficult to get across in words, but it's also an important space to let yourself practice being imperfect, because when you create art, it's not always going to be what you want it to be 100% of the time. I love Bob Ross, we all love Bob Ross, but as Elowen says, he's completely wrong. Sometimes there are mistakes, and as people, we need to allow ourselves to make mistakes. Art is a great way to practice being okay with being imperfect, practicing tolerance for your own mistakes, your own imperfection, your own humanity. Be compassionate with yourself, be loving towards yourself, and art can be that space where you learn how to practice doing that. If you make art to express yourself, that's the most important thing. And whether or not the piece is technically good or looks exactly the way that you want it to in the end is less important. What's important is that you felt something when making the art and that you learned from the experience. You learned something about yourself, maybe you learned something about how to do the next piece of art differently, but mostly it's about your own emotional journey and honoring that and making time and space. And when I say space, I mean emotional, mental space, but also that physical space. Art gives things a space that are so often ephemeral and hard to understand and hard to grasp, and it turns them into something real and tangible that you can see and touch. And I think that's really important too. So make art, everyone make art. Everyone in the system should make art. It's for the system kids, it's for the system adults, it's for the system members who are nonverbal, it's for the system members who are verbal. We could all benefit from doing more art and doing art together. So that's another big part of this. Thank you all so much for watching this. Just to sum up everything we're trying to say, this entire talk is about giving yourself space and finding space. Sort of the bullet points for how we approach it is 1, don't be a locksmith. Don't push people before they're ready. It's okay to talk about shoes. It's really important to just build up that rapport with people. And you don't have to talk about serious things. We encourage you to talk about frivolous things. The third thing is sandwiches. Sandwiches can just be sandwiches, or sandwiches can be an opportunity in your day-to-day life to reinforce mindfulness and taking a moment for yourself, which is really important. It's important to take care of your system mates, but it's always really important to be mindful of your own needs and self-care. And then lastly, finding ways to talk with each other and express yourself without using words, including art, but also any sort of activity that you all could get involved in and have fun with. That is pretty much it from us. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you, Björn, for joining me in this talk, and thank you to the Plural Positivity World Conference 2020. It is such an honor to get to be a part of this. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.